Spineless. No, The Best Way to Bury Your Husband. I would say no. The Night Circus. Yes. Meet Me at the Lake. No. Atmosphere. Yes. To Killing Mockingbird. Yes. World of Wonders. Yes for a kid. No for an adult. And that's it. That is it. Okie dokie. 7 books, 7 days. Can I do it? Guess we'll find it out. I made a goal for myself to finish my physical TBR by the end of summer. And what I mean by that is May, June, July. I know summer's still past that, but my goal is to do it in 3 months. This is the current status of the number of each book that I have in each genre. I have some overlap, like some of these genres, other book, like the books don't necessarily fit there exactly, but I narrowed it down to just 6 genres to kind of just condense it a little bit. 7 books, 7 days. That's 7 books in a week. So I thought, why not try and read 7 books in 7 days? Physical books only. We're trying to tackle the physical TBR. It is Tuesday. Now you're probably thinking, why wouldn't you start this on a Monday? I did, okay? I did, and I did read an entire book, and I didn't talk about it because I had nothing to say, so I'm going to talk about it now. I read Spineless, The Science of Jellyfish and the Art of Growing a Backbone. So I chose this book because I have a big long list of random topics that I'm interested in learning about. And so one of those topics is jellyfish. So I have this book, Spineless. I got it a long time ago, if I'm being honest, and I just now read it. This book, or so I thought, was The Science of Jellyfish. I was mistaken. I don't know if you can see this, but my book is a little damaged. So we had 3 things happen to this book while I was reading it. I was sitting on the couch in the morning and I had just started the book. I was on page 28 when I sneezed and I had my coffee in my hand, book in the other hand. Coffee everywhere. I set the book out to dry and I picked up the audiobook. I needed to read and I needed to let the book dry because I didn't want to damage it further, rip any pages. So it dries. Then I have the book in my bag. It's in this bag and there's also my water in there, and somehow my water spills all over the bag. It was sitting straight up and it was sitting in my car, and I don't know how, but it leaked all over and it got all over my book. And so then once again I sat it out to dry for a while and I kept listening to the audiobook and like very carefully flipping the pages so that I could read the book. The final thing that occurred is it got really, really stormy, rainy, dark, terrible wind, thunder, lightning, like crazy storms. And so it got really humid and so really fast. And I think that's why the glue on the spine started to like melt. I don't know. And the book started falling apart. The actual science part of this book, The Science of Jellyfish, the very first part of this was very interesting. I did learn a lot about jellyfish and I was very fascinated with that aspect of this book. The author also met a lot of very interesting people and I enjoyed learning about their stories. I appreciated what they had to say and how they got to where they are now, and in terms of jellyfish and their addition to the research of jellyfish. I, however, did not realize, and that's on me because I should have done more research. However, there are not a lot of books on jellyfish. I really struggled to find books solely on jellyfish. There are books on like a broader topic of like the ocean or sea creatures within the realm of jellyfish, but I just wanted to learn about jellyfish, and so there weren't a lot of options. I, however, did not realize that this was a memoir where the lady just happened to be fascinated in jellyfish and want to learn about jellyfish and do research and experience jellyfish and that sort of thing, while also navigating life. This book just jumps around so much, and it does have a structure where we learn about the life cycle of the jellyfish, and it's broken down into those different sections. However, it just jumps around so much between her personal life and then science of jellyfish and things she's experienced in terms of jellyfish, but then like what she had for dinner. And I feel like if there were maybe images or diagrams, charts, something to kind of tie it back in and kind of give you a visual of what's going on, what she's describing, it would have helped. Also, no offense to her, but I did not care about her personal things. I wanted to learn about jellyfish, not about her. Nothing against her. And overall, I just left with a lot more questions than answers. I don't really know what the intentions were for this book. It kind of just ended. There wasn't really a conclusion. Like, I feel like the book could have ended anywhere and I would have felt the same. I also really don't appreciate the way she described people and why that needed to be included at all. I feel like I just didn't like the way she described people, described herself. Just little tiny things like that bothered me. And I feel like if it was more directly focused on jellyfish and not her personal life and her personal thoughts and what she ate and how well she slept and her frequent flyer mileage points and all the little extra stuff, I would have enjoyed it more. Did appreciate learning about jellyfish, and I did learn. I learned a lot, and I'm glad that I did choose to further my interest in jellyfish. So moving on to today. So I actually have a book in every single genre. I have 6 genres that I'm going to be reading. And so the next genre is mystery. So I have The Best Way to Bury Your Husband. I'm about 100 pages into this book. And if you don't know, this is about a woman who bashes her husband's head in and he dies, and she all of a sudden is like, crap, what am I to do? This is all in the back of the book, no spoilers. She meets other women who are in similar situations. They have violent husbands and they end up ending their husbands' lives, and now they have to do something with all these bodies, and they're kind of all like, oh crap, like what do we do? And that is kind of what is going on. 100 pages in, I think it's like 400 pages, so it's a pretty big book for like a mystery. Sally's the main character, and then we kind of get a few chapters of the other women as well, and we're kind of just learning their stories, their background, and leading up to them. It's moving pretty slow right now. I am enjoying it though. It's not like it's not interesting considering the topic. Time to continue reading. This daughter is insufferable. She needs to leave. She needs to get out of here. She needs to go. Also, how do you not notice there's a dead person in your house? I have 60 pages left. Wait. 160 pages left. What is going to happen? Seriously. Seriously. Okay, I promise I'm wearing a shirt. So it's Wednesday, day 3, which means we have some catching up to do. Because I did finish The Best Way to Bury Your Husband yesterday. And then I also started the next book yesterday. And I'm very, very deep into the next book, but getting ahead of myself. The Best Way to Bury Your Husband. I just want to mention, because it's not on the back of the book at all, and that is the only research that I did before purchasing this book, was reading the bag and deciding I wanted to buy it. This book takes place during COVID, and the pandemic is very, very much involved in this book. And I also want to mention that you might want to look up trigger warnings for this book, because although this book does heavily rely on dark humor, there are very real and serious things that people experience with DV and other life things in this book. And again, dark humor is the way that these specific characters cope with it, but there are heavy topics, although it's supposed to be comedic, if that makes sense. I would say this book is probably like 150 pages too long. This book is 400 pages, and I think for a mystery that is quite long. The title, The Best Way to Bury Your Husband, we don't get to that point until like the very, very, very end. Also, this book is so extremely unbelievable. Like, it just literally would not have it. This just wouldn't happen. However, it's very entertaining if you like that sort of humor. Like, make light of unfortunate and terrible situations. I really appreciated there were 4 women and then a daughter, and I appreciated how each of them they all have their own stories, and they come from very different backgrounds. However, they all live on the same street. They all are in similar situations, and through that they build bonds and this lovely friendship that they have during unfortunate times. And I loved reading about their friendships growing and rebuilding, and that was honestly my favorite part, and them getting nice endings, how their life drastically changes in a positive way during these very difficult times for them and the whole freaking world. I really wish the mother-daughter duo, not Sally's daughter, not talking about Sally's daughter, the mom with the $2. I really wish that we got more of their story. And honestly, all of the characters, we started out at the beginning with just Sally, and then we got a few chapters on each of the women, and then it went back to just Sally. And I think I would have loved for the story to continue to bounce between the different characters. I personally don't like reading about fictional things with COVID and things like that involved, and I understand why, because of the author's note. The author's note, I think, is the most important part of this entire book, and it would be really interesting to hear the author talk about the situations in this book. She has a lot of experience and information on the topic during COVID or just in general, and it would be interesting for her to write like a nonfiction book on these topics. I'm sure it would be very difficult to read because it is such a heavy topic. However, it would be very interesting. I appreciate her intentions with writing this book. Moving on, last night I started my fantasy book. So this book is kind of like historical fiction, fantasy, magical realism, a lot of different things. I'm categorizing it as fantasy. So we have The Night Circus, and last night I stayed up and I read a big chunk of it, and then this morning I read a big chunk of it. I've actually read the first 2 sections, and I am now on page 300. So I read a good chunk of this book very quickly, and there's only 500 pages, so I only have 200 pages to go. So if you don't know, The Night Circus is literally about the night circus. It's this magical, enchanting circus that is only around at night, and it kind of just pops up. You don't know it's there, and then all of a sudden it's there. And this book follows people involved in the night circus. So we have different acts or people that have helped build the circus or built things for the circus or are involved in the circus in some way. I feel like if you're not invested by like page 5, you're probably not going to like the book, because the entire thing is like how it started out, if that makes sense. This follows many characters, although not much has happened and a lot has happened all at the same time. It's kind of one of those books where you just have to be enchanted by it in order to enjoy it and like the writing style to enjoy it. I find it very fascinating and I can picture it in my head very clearly. If you're someone who can't picture books in their head, then you might not enjoy it, but I am really, really, really enjoying it. And not a lot is happening. It's hard to explain that not a lot is happening because there is a lot happening, but you're just bouncing around learning the different stories of these different characters, and we go back in time, we go to the present, and it just kind of bounces around, and you just kind of have to be immersed in the world. I'm really liking it. It's just enchanting and magical, and I'm very intrigued as to see and read what is going to happen. There are friendships building and relationships and enemies, and there's this kind of competition happening a little bit. And if you like circusy things, I feel like you would really enjoy this because the atmosphere, I'm just having fun. You kind of just have to accept that anything could happen and just become completely immersed in the world, and I am doing pretty good so far. And this is my longest book that I have planned to read, so if I can read this one, I can read any of them. Okay, it's 3 o'clock. Yeah, I was listening to the Tinkerbell soundtrack, just who I am specifically. I have 100 pages left, exactly 100 pages. That's not enough. I have been reading any chance I get in between, doing the things I have to do. I just want to sit and finish it. But I also don't want to finish it because then it's over. This magical world that kind of has some realistic elements to it with all these very intriguing characters, but it's kind of a whole lot of nothing, but it's everything. What can I say? I haven't read a book that I've been this invested in a while, and there's only 100 pages left. I can see why people don't like this, but I can also see why people really do, because I'm one of those people. So it's now Friday. I think the last time I spoke, I was talking about the night circus, and I had like 100 pages left. What can I say about this book? Everything I've already said still holds up. I loved how it ended. I'm really glad it ended the way that it did. I was worried that it was going to be a rough ending, which I'm not saying it wasn't. However, I feel satisfied with the ending. I can live my life feeling okay. I don't think there will be a sense of impending doom when I think about this book. 5 stars. 5 stars. Wow. Wow. I can see how someone wouldn't like this book. However, I absolutely loved it. Everything I had to say before, still. Yesterday. So a few weeks ago, it was cold and yucky and gross, and I was so sick of winter. I was done. I was over it. So I went to Half Price Books, and I started looking for just the ultimate summer book. I'm talking being outside in the summer, swimming, the lake, the ocean, the beach, eating outside, maybe throw in like a family business, going to a beachside town. I don't know. That's the vibe I was looking for, and I found Every Summer After, read that, got that. I did. That is exactly what that book was. I didn't really care for the plot of the book or the characters in the book, and spoiler, there's a cheating situation that I think they should not have ended up together because of that situation. Moving on to yesterday, Thursday, day 4, I picked up Meet Me at the Lake, because when I bought Every Summer After, I also bought Meet Me at the Lake. This is the same author. So this book follows a girl. It's a past and present timeline once again, and her name is Fern, and in the past she spends one singular day with this boy named Will. While she has a boyfriend, he has a girlfriend. one singular day. Then they decide, oh, we're going to meet up 1 year from today. He doesn't show up. 10 years later, it's now. Her mother is dead. Her mother owns a resort. And so it's very similar with the beachside resort. And think like Dirty Dancing, but set in present day without the dancing, if that makes sense. Like that kind of resort. Will, the guy, pops back up into her life. And it's very messy because we have her ex. He had a girlfriend, then there's other family drama, the mom is dead, the business is failing, and then her ex is involved with the resort, and then her mom has a best friend who's also involved in the resort, and then she has a best friend who she had a falling out with, but they're actually friends again, and then she had like a troubled past, but we don't really know exactly what happens. None of that even matters. Most of it, we don't even get, like, the problems just get answered, like, oh, it's fine, problem solved. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I feel like this book is such a surface level book. I didn't like Fern, but I also hardly knew her. Will hardly knew him. They, I guess, spent time together, but they had no chemistry. My favorite character was the mom, and then Peter, which is the mom's best friend. And the same thing happened when I read Every Summer After. The mom and the mom's friend was my favorite part of the previous book as well. And I would have preferred her story because honestly I did not care. If you're looking for the summer aesthetic, that's it. I could barely tell you what happened in this book. I had literally nothing to say the entire time except for the fact that why does this author have a thing for cheating tropes? I don't know. Even if it's emotional, physical, whatever, it was still cheating. And what? Why is that like every single book she writes has that trope? Because I'm done. I was here for the lakeside aesthetic, the resort aesthetic, and I got that. And I honestly did not care about the story at all. Not one singular bit. It's a now and then, and the then pretty much all except for like 2 chapters takes place on that one day. That's crazy. She can make half the book over one day where they like kind of don't really do much of anything. And like insta love, my gosh. I mean, it's fine. It's whatever. I had a fun time. It was a good palate cleanser from this because this was pretty heavy, and this I could basically turn off half my brain to read it. Last night I thought, oh, let me get a jump start on day 5, which is today, Friday. I have one science fiction book to read, and that is Ready Player One. Here is the thing. I don't like science fiction. I never have. I've tried it several times. I've tried very different forms of science fiction. I have tried and tried. Haven't liked a single science fiction book I have ever read. I just don't like science fiction, but I do continue to try. I like to expand the genres that I read and read a lot of different types of books. So I'm open to science fiction. I just know that every science fiction book I have ever read, I have not liked it. Ready Player One, I have watched the movie. I have specific memories associated to the movie that I would like to alter, if that makes sense. I really liked the movie. I think it's a fun experience. However, how I experienced it is now tainted, I guess you would say. And I was trying to kind of bring the joy back into the story. So I thought, let me read the book and maybe redeem the story. I don't necessarily love the story of this book. When I watched the movie, it was more the visuals that I really enjoyed and the characters that I appreciated. When I started reading reviews to kind of hype myself up to get to reading it, it didn't seem like I would really like the book because the things in the movie that I liked weren't really in the book, and the things that I didn't like about the movie were in the book. So I thought, you know what? It's 5 days. I can do this. It's just a YA science fiction. Let me try. And I pick up the book and I read the first page and I put it back down. I can't do this. I don't like science fiction. I don't like the memories associated with the story. I don't necessarily love the story, even though books and movies are so different. People say the movie is so different from the book. I read the first page and I felt a sense of impending doom. I did. I was like, no. This sounds all too familiar. Putting it down. So I'm going to not read this book. I'm going to put it in a little library so someone else can enjoy it. And that's completely fine. It's just not my style. However, 7 books, 7 days. We're going to keep trying, okay? So then before I started this 7 books, 7 days, was reading Atmosphere. And I put it down because I just kind of was bored. I was only like 40 pages into it. I don't know, maybe. And so then last night and this morning, I read up to page 100. And again, bored isn't the right word. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I don't really have any thoughts towards the book at all, if I'm being honest. If you don't know, Atmosphere is about a woman named Joan who's an astronaut, and we have 2 timelines happening. We have her becoming an astronaut, and then the beginning of the book and chapters throughout the book, there is this accident that happens in space, and she's not in space, but other characters in the book are. And so we're jumping back and forth between her becoming an astronaut and then this accident and the aftermath of the accident. So I thought this would be a good selection instead of Ready Player One, because this is technically historical fiction. However, it is science, fiction. See what I'm doing? It is science fiction. It's just fiction on science, not science fiction. As I said, I'm 100 pages in, and it's fine. I'm enjoying it, but I also am not thinking about it at all when I'm not reading it. A lot of people said the audiobook is really good, so I think what I'm going to do is listen to the audiobook while also reading to kind of get more of an immersive reading situation happening. They're mowing. I'm terribly sorry. They're mowing again. Yeah, as I'm editing this, they're mowing again. That was a lot to catch up on. Sorry you missed it. But we are still on track. We're on day 5. We're on book 5. So let's get to reading also. This is a signed copy. And I didn't even know that, but it's pretty fun. Another connection, this has a lot of 80s references. This is set in the 80s. So I just finished the book like 5 seconds ago. Right. Cool. Yeah. Cool. I'm so fine. It's just like so fine. Right. My thoughts on the book. Like, what the fuck, bro? You know, first 100 pages, it was fine. It was whatever. Last 200 pages, you got me there. Dude. Joan, Vanessa, Frances. Fuck Barbara, though. And if I'm being honest, I could not tell them apart. But that's okay. I don't think that really matters. And it might have been like purposeful. Maybe. Yeah, not many books made me cry, but a little teary-eyed. I do recommend listening and reading at the same time. It does add to the emotion. I have now read 5 books. Yep, I have. Okay, it's been like 10 minutes. Put myself back together. We're good now. Because how lucky am I to feel such devastation and emotion and so many different feelings on words on paper. How lucky am I that I got to read that story and that I got to connect with it and that I got to feel from it and experience it. Very lucky. Okay. I probably maybe should have, I don't know, spaced out. I guess I did space out my sad books, my emotional books, and my little more books that were filled with humor and fun. But the next book is technically the historical fiction. However, the whole science fiction thing that we did, this means I'm reading 2 historical fictions in a row. However, I'm switching the genre. This is a classic. We're reading To Kill a Mockingbird. So I have read this book before. I think I read it when I was like 8. When I was young, I read a lot of books that I probably should not have read at the age that I was at. However, I liked to read, and I liked to read anything, and I still like to read anything. Even science fiction, I'm still gonna try. So if you have any good science fiction recommendations, I would love them. I'm still gonna keep trying. Anyway, I read this book when I was like 8. I'm very much not 8 now, not even near 8. I don't know, I've just been wanting to reread it as an adult. I feel like loving the story isn't the correct thing to say, and enjoying, I don't know, like, what enjoying and loving kind of imply that this is a happy story, which this is not a happy story. I don't know, but I feel like you know what I mean. Like, I remember enjoying it, not in a sense that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such a happy, fun story. This is book 6. I'm ahead of the game. How do I even summarize this book? It's set in the South. It says it's a coming-of-age tale. It views a world of great beauty and savage inequities through the eyes of a young girl and her father, a lawyer. I mean, that's true. That's true. That is what this book is about. Let's go hang out with Scout and her brother and her friend and her father, and all the other lovely and not so lovely characters. I didn't even realize it when I got dressed this morning. I'm literally dressed like Scout. I took my hoops out though, but I don't think she would wear hoops. There's a hole in my sock too. I want to say I forgot how terrible people were in this book, but I didn't. It's foul. Foul. Okay, it's Sunday. Day 7. I already read the 7th book. I'm going to discuss why. First, we need to discuss day 6. I like it. It's a good story to learn about, and I like how each character represents something bigger outside of just like the nosy, gossipy neighbors or the man who you never see. There's something else going on, and overall, how I take this book is it is about a little girl learning what kindness and empathy looks like in this time period. As Scout said, I think there's just one kind of folks. I feel like if you've read this book, you know. I'm glad that I read it again as an adult. Day 7, I chose a second nonfiction book, which I feel like some people might find boring, so I won't discuss it very long, and that's part of the reason why I didn't talk about reading it. Also, the context and, well, what this book is about, I feel like I didn't really have much to say throughout until I was finished with the book. So this is World of Wonders. This book, do we see the cover? I mean, I'll put them up on the screen, but it is stunning, and it is broken down into different essays where the author, she has a topic that's a plant or an animal, and she kind of just connects it back to a memory in her own life, and we learn a little bit about the plant or the animal or whatever it may be in very short chapters or sections. Each section is a few pages at most, and I actually started doing the same thing. So at the beginning of each chapter, not all of them, several of them have a picture of whatever the topic is, and then it says at the top the topic, and then go into the chapter. And I started writing at the top of each section my own connections and what I thought of when the topics were brought up. I started doing it myself because why not? And that was kind of fun and something different to do. I feel like the concept of this book was very intriguing, and I was really excited to read it. It is pretty fast-paced. I read it in a few hours. It's just a bunch of essays. I was very intrigued by the premise of this book. However, I feel like the sections either were too focused on the memoir aspect of the book or too focused on the, I guess, education side of the book. Overall, I would have preferred more on each of the individual animals or plants, insects, all of those things, the topics. I would have preferred maybe to have less topics and more on those topics. I also kind of feel like this book could be for like middle schoolers. I liked some of it, I didn't like others. Some of them were very lovely to read, and I felt a connection towards, or I felt the author's connection towards these individual beings. However, some of them fell really flat for me. Overall, I kind of just wanted more, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think that's a good thing to be left wanting more. I like the idea of it. I feel like it could be executed a little bit differently. I also wish there were pictures of or sketches of all of them, and not just some of them. Some had them, some didn't. I didn't. I read 7 books in 7 days. Now only have 2 books left to read on my May TBR, so I knocked a good chunk of books off the TBR for May and off the physical TBR. Technically 8 books off my physical TBR. I already put Ready Player One in a little library, so I don't have that anymore. Hopefully someone else will enjoy that book. Just wasn't for me, and that's okay. And that's it. That is it. I hope you have the best day ever and your coffee tastes like magic. Bye!